Well, the latest is that people are waiting. They're getting ready to welcome home that car once it drives up this road here and turns around the corner to the Shalit family home. It'll be the first time the family has travelled home together in more than 5 years. Now, the general public of Israel are being stopped from coming into the town. So basically what you have here are obviously the residents of the town itself, many of whom remember Gilad Shalit. They knew him, so they in particular are keen to welcome him home, but also many of the supporters who've been campaigning for the past 5 years to bring him back. That's what's happening here. Now, of course, it's a very similar situation in the West Bank and also in Gaza, where Palestinian families are waiting to welcome home their family members, the people who have been released from the Israeli prisons.
Ben, we can see some very proud Israelis standing behind you. Just give us some context here. The Israelis have been negotiating for 5 years for his release. Why has it happened now?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer. There's certainly been a lot of public pressure on both this current government, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, and the previous government, to get around to bringing him home, to make those negotiations with Hamas. Now, that's always been difficult because it was always going to mean a prisoner swap, and it was always going to mean an expensive prisoner swap in Israeli terms, and that's exactly what's happened. 1,000 prisoners, some of whom are responsible for some of the worst attacks of the First and Second Intifada. They have blood on their hands, and that's the reason why a number of the families of those victims have been just as vocal in trying to stop this exchange from happening. They say the price is simply too high and that the people who've done this will do it again. Why has it happened now? Well, probably it's got a bit to do with the change of government, but more importantly, the change that's taken place in the people who are leading Israel's security intelligence services. The domestic service, which is the Shin Bet, and the international service, of course, the famous Mossad. Now, prior to the new directors being appointed, the old leadership of those organisations was of the view that it wasn't the right thing to do. It was simply too much and it was simply not safe. Clearly, there's been a bit of a change there, and that's given Benjamin Netanyahu the ability to be able to make this deal, which is, of course, going to bring him a lot of political kudos, but kudos to the Palestinian group Hamas as well.
Ben, you mentioned there it's been a very high price for Israel to pay. One prisoner in exchange for more than 1,000. What has the public reaction been there in the last few days and today, of course, now it's happening?
Well, as I mentioned, there are a lot of people here who don't want this to go ahead, and they were at the High Court of Israel yesterday trying to put their case, trying to get an injunction to stop this from happening. But look, there is massive majority public support for this to go ahead, 80% according to some polls. And the reason for that is because Israel is a country that has a conscript army. It is the case that most Jewish families will send their sons and daughters into the army. Women are required to do 2 years, men are required to do 3, and we're not just talking about national service, we're talking about, in some cases, combat units, and clearly they're combat units that do see action from time to time. This has always been the case, and it's always been the case that the Israeli government, of whatever colour it is, has that bond, that promise with the Jewish Israeli people that it will do everything it can to bring home a soldier, dead or alive. There was a prisoner swap that I reported on about 2.5 years ago. It was a much smaller prisoner swap, but some similar criminals were released into Lebanon this time in exchange for the bodies of 2 Israeli soldiers who had been killed in Lebanon. So massive public support for keeping that promise and for bringing one Israeli soldier home, even if it's the price of releasing 1,000 Palestinian soldiers.
And Ben, presumably the political discussion in Israel there has mentioned the fact that this could well send a signal to any future potential hostage takers, that the high price that could be extracted from Israel for the release of a captured soldier or even a citizen.
Very much, Andrew. I mean, and that's just one of the arguments that's been played out. If you do this, then you are essentially inviting Hamas or Hezbollah or whoever it might be to kidnap more Israeli soldiers and extract this kind of price again. But that debate has been played out. And it has to be said that when the last time that this deal looked like it was going to happen, which I think was probably about a year and a half ago, those were voices that were very, very loud, and I think they swayed the day. I think the Israeli public at that time thought that the price was simply too high. Well, not anymore.
Ben Knight outside Gilad Shalit's family home. Thanks very much.
Thank you.